Hello, so I see that you want to continue as a front-end developer, which makes sense. So as a front-end developer, you already have the necessary skill, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. These are the these are the underlying technologies that you would use as a front-end developer. However, in more complex scenarios, you might want to use libraries like React or frameworks like Next.js or Vue.js. Now, those are like the premium, but as a starter, JavaScript does make sense. And when it comes to front-end developer, also have to understand how to interact with the backend. And there are different ways to interact with the backend. One of the ways, in most cases, you are most likely going to interact as a. Let me open one of the folders. Let me just create a folder here. Front end. Great. So front end, and in this folder, I'll be creating a test project that will be interacting with the backend. And there are different ways to interact with the backend. You can interact with socket. So let me just make this bigger. Then add our HTML skeleton. So you can interact with sockets. We have the socket. We have REST API. We have SOAP. And the new one now we have gRPC. So and there are also different ways. There are a lot of ways, but the one that you should focus on as a beginner is REST API. This is like the most popular one that is used, and as a beginner, this is what you should start with. So we'll be using the REST API, and there are different ways to work with the REST API. The components is divided into several categories. So for the REST API, you have what we call the method. Whenever you are trying to connect to the backend, you have to let the backend know the way you want to connect with them, and the method include post, get, we have patch, we have put. We have a lot of them, but these are like the popular ones. Post, get, patch, put, popular ones. Okay, that's the method. And also we have what we call authorization. There are some backend that would like to know that are you coming from a recognized source or not. So authorization can be like a bearer token. Authorization can be bearer token. It can be basic authorization, that's with password, with an ID and a password. Then we have OAuth. So these are very, very important, and in most cases you would find these with patch, put, and post request. In most cases, get requests are always free requests that you don't need authorization. So you have the authorization, then you have the request parameter. This request parameter is whenever you send a request to a particular API, you need to add some details in order for them to understand what you really want. Imagine you want to tell the API that give me the list of movies that you have. You need to also be able to tell them, I want the movies to be Nigerian movies, and I want those Nigerian movies to be from a certain actor. So those things will be put in the request parameter, and sometimes they call it queries. Whenever you are dealing with get, they call it queries. When we are dealing with post, and it's a request parameter is always in the body, like that. request parameter. So all this will be seeing it in use very soon. Now, what else do we use for interacting with the API? What else do we use? So we have the header. Okay, I forgot to say this authorization is under header. It should be under header. So we have the header. So the header can be, how do you want to interact with the backend? You can interact as an XML request, or you can interact as a JSON request. You can interact as a form data. You can interact as a buffer request. So here you put it as a content type. The header will be content type. Then the header will be content type, and you define how the content should be. Then we have authorization, and you define the type of authorization. Then also we have content length, but these two are the most important for now. Later on you'll be learning more about all these things. Then so let's just stop here. These are the components that you should put your mind in when you're interacting with the API. So let's get right into coding. Maybe it's moving easier if we are just doing some coding. Okay, so we'll be using our a particular API called fetch. They call it a method called fetch. So this fetch allows you to make requests to an external device, an external API. Right. So for example, now if I say fetch google.com, I have to put HTTPS. So if I say fetch google.com and I say console.log, if I run this, it's fetch doesn't need to be okay because I'm running it as a node request. It needs fetch to be defined. Now I don't want to run it as a node. Very sorry about that. I don't want to run it as a node. I want to run it as a plain HTML file, as a front-end JavaScript tool. So what I will do is I would run it in a browser. I'm going to run it in a browser instead. Okay, so in order for this to run, what I would do is I would add it to the HTML here and put the source as index.js. Great. So when I reload now, you see it's sending the request to google.com, but we're not getting any response because of course google.com would not allow us to just be making those type of requests. So that is how it goes. I can send the request to let me say blessing.com. When I reload, it's sending request to blessing.com. So this is the way you send the request. Now you see that many of these requests are not going, and I think many of them are getting blocked. Error protocol. Okay, let me try this without SSL. Just want one that goes so that you can use it as how the memory. Okay. Oh, we're getting blocked. Yeah. So you'll be dealing with CORS later on, but for now, let us just focus on the simple ways of interacting with the API. Simple ways of interacting with the API. Okay. As a form of example of how you of some APIs that you can interact with. For example, now we have this presentation, and we have all the details about the APIs that are available that you can interact with. For example, let us just take one and run with that. Now here we have slash API slash v1 slash account. What this is telling us is that the type of request that we are running with is a get request. Remember when I was talking about the method get request, and it's telling us that the base URL of this API should be put at the beginning of this, then add this testnet.mirror node. I don't know, it's not allowing me to copy. It's not allowing me to copy, so I'll just type it out. Testnet. Okay, I think I've been interacting with it before. So let me add it as. Let's test if it's going to go, if we're not going to be facing any of these errors. Let's see if it's going to go. Okay, yes, we are able to access it. That makes sense. So let's continue using this. To be repeating this, I'll just put it in a variable const base URL. Great. So whatever I want to do, I'll just put base URL plus. So now you see that here we sent a request to slash API slash v1 slash accounts as request as told here, and it told us that it will list account entities on the network. That means the accounts that are available on the network. And when we check our response, so here I came to network, fetch HR, then click on the request. You see that the method is a get, and when we check on the response, let's come to preview. We see that there are different accounts with the account balances and all that. So these are data that was returned for us. Let's look at the headers again. The status code, oh, I forgot to write here, status code. So another thing that you should also look at is status code. It's 200, which means it's okay. Anything 200 is okay. But if you are getting 300, 400, 500, there's an issue. Now the meaning of this, you can search for it. Just do an error. Let me remove this. It's going to give us an error. So I'll show you how the code looks like when we do that. So now you see it's red now, and okay, it's not a valid URL. So definitely there's no response from that. It's not a valid URL. But imagine it's a valid URL, but the directory is not valid. It should give us a 404 error. 404 error. 404 error means that it's not found. It means that it's not available. We can find the URL, but the directory that you are trying to look for is not available. So it's 404, not found. If we see something like 501 or 500, that's like a server error. That's from the backend. The error is from the backend. If you see 403, 403 means that the authorization you just provided is not recognized, is not valid. So there are different ones like that. Okay, so now we've been able to get the data here, but how do we use our data when we want to use it in the front end? So for fetch now, in order to use fetch, there's something we call await. Await means that while you are trying to retrieve the data from the resources, we are going to wait for you, and when you are done, you should return your result into this place, into response. Because if we don't add await, it immediately returns an object, and the name of the object is called promise. It's going to return an object. Let me log it out for you so that you should know. I'll log response for you. So when I reload here and I check the log, you see it returns a promise. It returns a promise, and now we know that the promise is fulfilled, but we don't have access to the response that the promise just gave us. We don't have access to that. So that's the problem. Oh, it's still not found. Let me, okay, account here. But although I am able to check here and see this and see that, oh, it's not found, but then I don't have access to it here because this is a promise. Now a promise means that, just like what it means that what you are requesting for, I'm not ready to give you yet, but this is a promise. Hold it, that when I am done, I'll come back to this promise and give you what you want. That's a promise. And in order to use a promise, you need to add a wait in front. So now when this response is given, I can now add a wait in front here and put that into another object. But instead of doing that, I could just easily add a wait here and get my result. So when I add a wait here and I reload, you see it's waiting. There's an error. Await is only valid on it. Okay. So in order for me to use await, it has to be in a function. It's only valid in an async function and the top level bodies of modules. Okay, no problem. You don't need to shout. So let me put it in a function. Great. Function get. So what they are just telling us is that we shouldn't just make it plain like this. We have to put it inside the function. So function, but if I put inside the function, I must add async in front of the function. You get it? Okay, so now I'm just going to call get. So let's return response. So here now I'm going to call get. Great. So when I reload now, you see I get my response, my promise here. Now, why am I getting promise again? I've written await here, but I'm still getting promise. It's because this get is also going to return a promise and tell you to wait, because something is inside it that is also telling it to wait. So you need to add await in front of this get also before you can get access to whatever the get returns. If I don't want to add await here, that means I just need to log out what is here, and I'll get what I want. So when I log it out, I'm going to get what I want. So I got a response now. This is a response, it's not a promise. Have you seen it? So now I've gotten what I want here, but I want to get it outside here, so I don't want to get it inside the function, so I have to wait for the function. Now you see that the response doesn't make sense. It's not like what we got in this place that is giving us all the accounts and all that. You see, that's another thing again that you need to know when you're working with promises. When you're working with requests the response will give you all the things you need to know about the response. So it will give you the header, it will give you the status, it will give you the type, the URL, and the body itself. But what we are interested in is the body. That's what we are interested in. And because we are interested in only the body, what we'll just do is that this response, we are going to cast it into a JSON. Now the reason we are casting to JSON is because this is a JSON API. It's going to return JSON. So we can use .json to get what we want. Right. So .json, let's put it into a result. And this result, we can return the result. So let us check it again and see what we got. We got an error, get, unexpected get. Unexpected token get. That doesn't make sense to me. Let's check. Okay. Maybe what it wants for us to do is to pull it out here. Okay, let us check and see. So we are still with the issue that we had before. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to use ify, that's a function, and immediately invoked function. I'll put async here. Okay. Can't come and disturb me here. Okay, now we have our response. So I have to put inside the function. What I was running away from is what I still got in trouble with. So I put inside the function and I have access to all the accounts that I needed. So now these are the accounts. Great. So this is how I've interacted with an API and I've gotten my result here. Now how do I use this result in this place? That's another thing. Okay, so let me just create another div and put the h2 as, let me say, accounts. Then here will be where the accounts will be added. So let me put a div and let me target this div as accounts. So what I want to do is I want to just add all the accounts that are here. I want to add it to this place. So first I'll say loading, so that people can know that we are expecting something. So let me target it in JavaScript. So in JavaScript now I can now say document response here as what we call accounts. So that means I will now say response.account dot. Now here I would like to use for each. So meaning that it's an array, I want to check every account. That's every data that is inside. So inside the for each, we are going to be adding whatever we have here into the HTML. But first, let us create a fragment. Document fragment. Now in this fragment, now we'll be adding whatever we want here. Fragment.append. So here we'll just say document.const span equals to document.create elements. So this is just JavaScript's way of creating, instead of writing it out, create element span. It's going to create a span element for us, and that span element, now we can add the inner text, span.inner text, because to this account. Now account is an object, so we can't just write it as a text, so we'll just say account.account. That doesn't make sense to me, but so technically this account will give you this, give you alias, it will give you auto renew period, whatever you have here. That's what that account will give you. So in order to access one of it, you have to say dot account or dot balance or dot decline reward or dot deleted, something like that. And that's why. So let me just let me say object. No, don't then say object. obj.account, so that it will not be confusing. obj.account. So we are accessing this. So this span tag is going to have this account here. So imagine I want to also have the account balance. So how do I do it? I can just say, put a text like account ID is this. Then I can now also say account balance so this is what we call string concatenation. Is maybe adding different strings together in order to form one string. So we are concatenating. This plus sign means concat. Now the confusing thing about JavaScript is that when you're working with numbers, this plus sign acts as addition. But when you're working with string, this plus sign acts as concatenation. Very, very confusing, but that is what it is. So account balance, then we can say obj.balance, obj.balance, then we get our account balance. So obj.balance. I'll be stopping this very soon because I don't want it to be too long. Then when you have any question you ask, I'll do a video on that. So now this is what it is. Then this span, we have to append it to the fragment. Great. Now the fragment has all the accounts that we need now. So here now we have to append it to this account. So documents.querySelector append child. So fragment. No, so why did we create fragment? We don't want the browser to be building HTML every time we are looping through this. So we have to save it in a fragment first. It's like saving it in an intermediary box. So this box will hold everything we need. Then when we are done, we can now append everything at once to account. If not, we would have been doing document or this, then append here, which doesn't make sense. It's possible, but doesn't make sense. So here we are appending the fragment. But if we append it like this loading will be showing. So we need to make sure that loading goes away. In order to do that, we'll first just clean it up. .inner HTML equals to bam. So here now it removes that, and let me show you that it shows. So let's see if it works. What we are doing works. So now reload. So it's loading. We have an error. So now the reason why this did not change is because we have an error. So always look at this error when you are working. So now it tells us that cannot read property of null, reading append child. Now it's telling us that this append child is referencing a null object. Now why is this object null? And just look at it. I've seen the error, but look at it. What error are we having here? Now the error we're having here is that this is a class referencing accounts, and when we want to reference it in JavaScript, we have to add a dot in front. There must be a dot in front, and that is where the error came from. Let us reload again. So now you see the loading, then we have our accounts here. Does that make sense? Yes. So that makes sense, but we want the loading to get away, so we come here and we reload again. Now the loading has gone and we have all our details, but it's mangled and doesn't make sense. So the reason is that span does not have a display block by default. pan will have inline display by default, and that is why it's like this. You can do this by adding a break in between, or just put it as a p tag, or just create a p tag. When you create a p tag, everything here, you see, everything shows properly. So I can add a space here. Account balance, just do something like this. Account ID, do something like that. So you see, account ID is this, then the account balance is this. Now we are getting this from this whole response, you see. So this is how I am able to get data from an API and put it in my UI. So now I can design this properly and just make it make sense. Let me show you a particular website that does that. Scan. So this same thing we just did is what this scan is doing. Although they did it, they are adding more things, but the same API that we are looking at is what they are also doing. So let's go to account. So you see, so the account, you see the expiry, the token, the memo, the balance. So this is what the front-end developer did. What they just did is that they called that, you see the balance is here, the account, expiry, you know. Do you see that? So that's what the front-end developer did, and that's what we are just doing here. You can just style it properly and have something like this, you see. So that is how you read from an API and you put it in your UI. So you remember we are just doing get request now, and if you notice we did not mention anything like get here. It's because by default fetch would assume that your request is a get request, but let us say that we want to do a post request. How do we ensure that fetch knows that it's a post request? So the way to do it is to add an option here in the second part and put method and put post. So here now you can also put content type. No, not content type. Very sorry about that. Headers. So the headers will have content type. Then we have application/JSON. So we can have authorization also, so like that. So this will let the request know that it's a post request. Let us try it. It's not going to work because all there are mirror node requests are post requests. So, but let us just show you. So here now, if you check this, you see that the request method is post. So let me clear all this and let me just reload. So now if you check it now, you see that the request method is now post because we've added it there. If we add a put method here now, I'll reload this and we check, you see that it's going to give us a put. So that's how you change the name. You see that I give it a 4 because it's not available. So that's how you interact with API. We can go in depth, but try this out. Try to see if you can interact with other. I will add this to the link. This is the API. Oh no, this is the API here. So try to play around with other ones apart from accounts. We have accounts. We have this is still accounts. We have balances. We have transactions. So